enemy soldiers were moving through the frozen field, and only one man was waiting for them. No backup, no retreat, just a machine gun, a narrow bridge behind him, and a decision that would decide whether hundreds lived or were trapped forever. The wind cut through the trees like a blade, carrying the sound of boots crunching through ice. He could see them now, dark figures spreading out, confident, advancing. They had numbers, he had something else. Before we step deeper into this moment, make sure you hit like and subscribe, because here on Clandestine Combat, we bring you stories that most people have never heard. Stories where seconds decide history. December 18th, 1944. The air was so cold it burned your lungs with every breath. The kind of cold that slowed your fingers, that made metal feel like ice against your skin. Sergeant Thomas Hartley lay still behind his .30 caliber machine gun, his eyes locked on the distant tree line. He didn't move, not even an inch. Behind him stood a bridge over the Our River. It didn't look like much, just wood and steel crossing a narrow stretch of frozen water. But right now it was everything. On the other side of that bridge, American soldiers were pulling back, trying to escape a rapidly collapsing front line. If that bridge fell, if the enemy crossed it, those men would be cut off with nowhere to go. Hartley knew that, and he knew something else. He was alone, no squad beside him, no second gunner feeding ammo. Just silence, and the growing sound of an approaching force that outnumbered him beyond reason. Most men in that situation would think about survival, about running, about finding cover and waiting for orders that might never come. But Hartley didn't think like most men. For 18 years before the war, he had hunted in the forests of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Long winters, deep woods, endless patience. He had spent days sitting in tree stands, waiting without movement, without sound, learning how to disappear into the environment. He learned how to watch, how to read the smallest shift in motion, how to let the moment come to him instead of chasing it. Out here on this frozen battlefield, those same instincts took over. The enemy soldiers kept moving closer, spreading out across the field, unaware of what was waiting for them. Hartley adjusted his grip slightly on the machine gun, slow and controlled, careful not to catch the light or make a sound. His breathing was steady, his heartbeat calm. He wasn't panicking, he was waiting. The distance kept shrinking, 60 yards and maybe less now. Close enough to see the shape of their gear, the way they moved, the confidence in their steps. They believed the bridge ahead was just another objective, another position that would fall like the rest. They had numbers on their side, and in war numbers often decide the outcome. But numbers mean nothing if you don't see the threat. Hartley's finger rested near the trigger, but he didn't fire. Not yet. Every instinct from years in the wilderness told him the same thing. Wait longer. Let them come closer. Let them expose themselves. Rushing now would only give away his position too early, and once they knew where he was, they would spread, take cover, and overwhelm him within minutes. He needed one perfect moment, not 10 rushed ones. The cold pressed in harder, biting through his uniform, stiffening his muscles. His cheek rested lightly against the stock of the weapon, his eye fixed down the line of fire. He could feel the metal beneath his hands, frozen and unforgiving, but his grip never changed. He had trained his body for stillness long before he ever held a weapon in war. A few of the advancing soldiers slowed slightly, scanning the area. Something didn't feel right to them. The forest was too quiet. No gunfire, no movement, just an empty stretch of snow leading to a bridge that should have been defended, but looked abandoned. That illusion was exactly what Hartley wanted. He had positioned himself carefully, partially concealed by natural cover, using the terrain the same way he would use brush and shadow while hunting. From a distance, he wasn't a threat. He wasn't even visible unless you knew exactly where to look, and they didn't. More of them stepped into the open, closing the gap even further. 40 yards now, maybe less. Close enough that every second mattered. Close enough that hesitation could cost everything. Hartley exhaled slowly, his breath barely visible in the freezing air. This was it. The moment where patience turns into action. Behind him the bridge remained silent, but beyond it lives were depending on him buying time. Not winning a battle, not defeating an entire force, just holding long enough for others to escape. That was the mission, and now it was about to begin. Hartley's finger tightened on the trigger, and in a single instant the silence shattered. The machine gun roared to life, ripping through the frozen air with a force that echoed across the field. The first burst was controlled, precise, exactly where it needed to be. The advancing line broke instantly. What had been a confident approach turned into confusion within seconds. Men dropped, others dove for cover, and the entire formation collapsed into chaos. Hartley didn't waste a single round. Every movement he made was deliberate. Short bursts, adjust, fire again. He wasn't spraying blindly. He was reading movement, tracking shapes, anticipating where they would go next. Just like he had done in the forests for years, except now the stakes were far higher. The enemy soldiers scrambled, trying to understand where the fire was coming from. From their angle, it was almost invisible. The sound echoed through the trees, making it difficult to pinpoint his exact position. Some fired back toward the bridge, but their shots were scattered, uncertain. They hadn't expected resistance like this. Hartley shifted slightly, just enough to adjust his line of fire. His body remained low, controlled, minimizing his exposure. He knew the longer he stayed in one exact position, the greater the risk. But moving too much would reveal him. It was a balance, one he understood better than most. Seconds stretched into minutes. The initial shock had passed, and now the enemy began to reorganize. Small groups started spreading out, trying to flank, trying to find angles, trying to close in from different directions. They still had the advantage in numbers, and they were starting to use it. Hartley saw it happening, and he adapted. He shifted his aim, cutting off one group before they could move too far. Another burst forced a second group back into cover. He wasn't just holding his ground. He was controlling the space in front of him, shaping their movement, forcing them to react to him instead of the other way around. But the pressure was building. Return fire began to grow more accurate. Rounds struck the ground around him, kicking up snow and dirt. The sound of bullets snapping past his position grew louder, closer. They were starting to find him. Still, he didn't panic. He had expected this, and he was ready for it. The incoming fire intensified, cutting through the air with sharp, cracking sounds. Snow burst up around Hartley's position as rounds struck closer and closer. Small fragments of wood and dirt hit his face, but he didn't flinch. His world had narrowed down to one thing, the line in front of him. He fired again, short and controlled, forcing another group of enemy soldiers to drop back. Every time they tried to push forward, he met them with resistance. Not wild, not desperate, calculated. He wasn't trying to stop all of them at once. He was breaking their momentum piece by piece. But the reality remained. There were too many of them. From the left side, a small group began moving faster, using a shallow dip in the ground for cover. They were learning, adapting, trying to get around his line of fire. Hartley caught the movement just in time. He adjusted, led his aim slightly ahead of them, and fired a tight burst. The group scattered instantly, dropping flat against the frozen earth. He shifted again. Another group on the right attempted the same move. This time they were more cautious, moving in short bursts, stopping, then advancing again. They were getting smarter with every minute that passed. The longer this fight continued, the more dangerous it became. Hartley knew he couldn't let them settle into a rhythm. He changed his firing pattern, unpredictable now. A burst from one angle, then silence. A few seconds later, another burst from a slightly different position. To the enemy, it felt like there were multiple defenders, like they were walking into a trap instead of facing a single man. That illusion bought him time. Behind him, across the bridge, the distant sound of movement continued. Vehicles, boots, orders being shouted. The retreat was still happening. That meant one thing, that he was doing his job. But time came at a cost. His hands were starting to stiffen from the cold, his muscles tightening from staying in position for so long. The weight of the machine gun pressed into his shoulder, each burst sending a heavy recoil through his body. Ammunition was still holding, but not endless. Every round had to count. And the enemy, they weren't stopping. If anything, they were becoming more determined. Hartley could feel it, the pressure, the growing realization that this wasn't going to end quickly. This wasn't a short engagement. This was going to be a test of endurance. And it was only just beginning. Minutes stretched into something heavier, something slower. Time didn't move normally anymore. Every second felt deliberate, every action carried weight. Hartley had lost track of how long he had been firing, adjusting, waiting. But he knew one thing for certain. He was still holding them. The enemy tried again, this time more coordinated. Fire came in from multiple angles, not just random shots anymore. They had started communicating, directing each other, pushing forward in waves instead of scattered groups. It was clear now. They understood there was only one gun stopping them, and they were determined to break it. A burst of incoming fire slammed into the ground just inches from Hartley's position. He shifted quickly, dragging the machine gun slightly to the side, using what little cover he had left. Snow and dirt filled the air, reducing visibility for a brief second. That second was enough. He fired again. Short, controlled, not effective. The advancing line stalled once more, forced back into cover. But this time they didn't retreat as far. They were closer now than ever before, close enough that Hartley could hear their voices through the chaos. Sharp commands, urgency, frustration. They knew the bridge was right there. And they were running out of patience. Hartley checked his ammunition with a quick glance. Still enough, but not for long. Every decision from this point forward had to be perfect. There was no room for waste, no space for hesitation. He slowed his breathing again, forcing his body to stay calm despite the rising intensity. This wasn't just about firing anymore. This was about control, about staying ahead mentally while everything around him tried to pull him into panic. Another movement caught his eye. A larger group, moving together, attempting to push straight through with speed instead of caution. It was a risk, but if it worked, they could overwhelm him in seconds. Hartley didn't rush, he waited. Closer, closer, just like before. And then he opened fire. The impact was immediate. The charge broke apart, momentum lost in an instant. Some dropped, others scattered, and once again the advance was stopped. Not completely, but enough. Enough to buy more time. That was all he needed. Behind him, the sounds across the bridge had changed. Fewer vehicles, less movement. The retreat was almost complete. The realization hit him quietly. He had done it. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but effectively. He had held them long enough. Now came the hardest part, knowing when to stop. Staying any longer would mean being surrounded. The same patience that kept him here now told him it was time to move. Slowly, carefully, he pulled back from the gun, keeping low, using the terrain just as he had used it all along. The enemy was still focused forward, still expecting resistance from the same position. They didn't realize the man who had held them for nearly 90 minutes was already slipping away. Hartley crossed the bridge quietly, the cold air hitting him as the noise of battle faded behind him. He didn't look back, he didn't need to, because sometimes the greatest victories aren't about pushing forward, they're about holding the line just long enough for others to survive. And on that frozen day in 1944, one man did exactly that. If this story made you feel something, drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts. And share this video with someone who appreciates real stories of discipline and survival. For more untold moments like this, stay with Clandestine Combat.